You can hear them any place, can't you? Is it really because you want to hear what whoever you've invited has to say? It's not that at all. You've invited him here, whoever the hell he is, to torture your administrators. And this is all you care about. But there never was an infant that didn't wet his pants to annoy his mother. What would be your actions if you were a college president? What would be my action if I were a college president? I'd get the hell out of the college grounds before they murdered me, naturally. What would be your action if you were a college president faced with student dissent? Well, when students dissented, I'd listen and I'd admire them, because the only worthwhile student is the student who does dissent. The only worthwhile student is the student who does question his elders. The only worthwhile student is the student who feels impelled to protest. But when that student throws a rock or takes over a building, he is a criminal and should be treated as a criminal. I saw the student activists creating their democratic society 2 years ago. Secretary McNamara was invited to speak at Harvard. The SDS roared obscenities at Secretary McNamara until he could not be heard. McNamara tried to leave that hall by automobile. They stopped his automobile. They denied him the freedom of movement. He left that car. They began to hit him on the head with the poles on which their placards were nailed. It was only because the Cambridge police arrived, formed a cordon around the Secretary of Defense, and sneaked him through several connecting cellars of Harvard buildings that he escaped with his life the next morning. And if you want to know what's wrong with a great deal of America, it dates from this incident. The next morning, Dean Monroe was asked what punishment he was going to give these students. And he said, "I see no reason to punish students for what was purely a political activity." Now, if depriving a man of his freedom of speech, if depriving him of his freedom to move, if hitting him on the head with clubs, if that's a political activity, then rape is a social event and sticking up a gas station is a financial transaction. What do you think of abstract art? Can you explain it? Of course I can. Abstract art is the product of the untalented, sold by the unprincipled to the totally bewildered. You use presidents frequently in the Labner. Do you know any of them well enough to treat them as you do? Well, certainly not. However, I could have known Lyndon Johnson a great deal better if I had accepted an invitation to do a ceremony called the Presidential Prayer Breakfast. As I understand it, you're invited to have breakfast with the president and then pray, or it may be the other way around. You pay for your breakfast. The only reason I didn't go was that I couldn't figure out, if you prayed with Lyndon Johnson, who do you pray to? I noticed that the no smoking signs face you. I'm sorry, but I see that you do react cheerfully to disrespectful stories about presidents. Once when, during the presidency of Harry Truman, I was called by a man in the State Department and asked if I could come to Washington to accept a citation to be given to me by the president. And I said I could make it. And he never did tell me what for. I didn't know what I was being honored for. I could think of any number of reasons. I was very curious to know, you know. Now, I'll get a little bit ahead of this story and tell you that at the ceremony, the president, instead of simply handing me the rolled citation, as they usually do, opened it and read it. He wanted to know what he was citing me for. You know, he read every word carefully. You couldn't tell. Neither of us know to this day. I think it was an early essay by Dean Rusk. However, now, before the banquet, there was a party, a little reception for the guests, and present was Secretary of the Interior Oscar Chapman, myself, and 98 armed men, all Secret Service. And when Mr. Truman came in, the secretary said, Mr. Truman, this is Mr. Capp, the creator of the comic strip. And Mr. Truman said, the creator of what comic strip? Well, I told him. And then the secretary said, Mr. Capp, this is the president. And I said, of what country? During the Eisenhower administration, there was some doubt among the liberals in this country that Mr. Eisenhower had a sufficiently liberal view. And in order to correct that impression, he announced the People's to People's campaign. He appointed 39 leaders of American thought, industry, and science, 39 leaders of various aspects of American life, and me, 40 in all, as chairman of committees which were then to get in touch with our opposite numbers, the other side of the Iron Curtain, communicate with them, exchange cooking recipes and jams and jellies, and just promote eternal peace. We all came to Washington to be briefed. We were on our way in to be briefed by the president. He was waiting in a rather large chamber behind a desk, and I was entering with the chairman of international athletics, a man named Gene Tunney, who still is, by rights, the heavyweight champion of the world. He's a huge guy, and I had my arm around his shoulder, and I was hastily trying to get in the last line of a rather filthy story before we arrived in the presence of the president. As I grew to know General Eisenhower a bit better later, I could have saved it. But at any rate, just as I was about, first I must explain, you know, I have a wooden leg. It's now called prosthesis. That's the word for it now, but that always has seemed a rather dirty word to me. It doesn't seem quite nice, and so I use the old Long John Silver term. I had my arm around Gene Tunney. I was just about to give him that last line. Suddenly, I grabbed him. I knew I mustn't take another step, and I looked down, and out of my left trouser leg were dropping nuts and bolts. I looked behind me, and there was my wooden leg, half of it. It had come apart at the knee, and it was quivering there. It was standing up and quivering, with the shoe and stocking still on it. Well, everybody was terribly upset. They said, Al Capp has broke his leg. And they said, send for an ambulance. And I said, well, could you get me a tow truck? I don't know, where are you taking me? And they said, the Walter Reed Hospital. I said, could you stop at a garage? Many of you have asked me, where do I get all the revolting-looking men and maddeningly beautiful girls I draw in the Labner? And the answer is that I come to forums like this and just look around. What should we do about the problem of the unwed mother? The unwed mother is no problem at all. It's the wed mother who is our problem. And we can't sweep the problem of the wed mother under the table any longer. Now, the unwed mother gets a salary for every child she produces. This is like a reckless driver getting a bonus for every car she hits. The unwed mother's rent is paid. The unwed mother is sent to night school. The unwed mother has her children picked up in the morning and transported to whatever school she may choose. She's no problem. It's the wed mother. This girl, the wed mother, in a moment of madness, when she decided to marry the father of her children before she had any, it was then that she gave up all the privileges that would have come to her if she hadn't made this foolish mistake. There are wed mothers in this room, and we must give them some benefits of our great society. Not equal, of course, because they have made that mistake. Why are you against Ann Landers? You know that, really, you can't be against Ann Landers. Where in a decent, wholesome newspaper can you read dirty stories? I mean, for the unimaginative nymphomaniac, Ann Landers will give you more tips. Problems that would take Sigmund Freud 10 years to solve, Ann Landers can solve with a two-line wisecrack. I think it's very kind of newspapers to let her have all their readers as guinea pigs. We do know the trouble people are in when they write to Ann Landers for advice. We never find out what trouble they're in when they take it. Is there intelligent life on other planets? I hope so. There's damn little of it here.